Welcome back to this new inspirational video. Today I wanted to go on with chapter 5, 6 and 7, the final chapters of the book As A Man Thinketh, and then we've went through all of it. So as I told you, it's not a huge book, but a very pretty and powerful book indeed. This chapter is titled The Thought Factor in Achievement, and James said the following: all that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thoughts. In a justly ordered universe, where laws of balance would mean total destruction, individual responsibility must be absolute. A man's weakness and strength, purity and impurity are his own, and not another's man's. They are brought about by himself and not by another, and they can only be altered by himself, never by another. His condition is also his own, and not another man's. His suffering and his happiness are evolved from within. As he thinks, so he is. As he continues to think, so he remains. A strong man cannot help a weaker unless the weaker is willing to be helped. And even then the weak man must become strong of himself. He must, by his own efforts, develop the strength which he admires in another. None but himself can alter his condition. You know, if I go away from the text for a second here, this paragraph about we having to develop the strength for ourselves, which we admire in another, is very useful. In fact, that's exactly how I started YouTube years ago with my other channel, was that I realized if other people can do this, then so can I. So instead of being like, can I really be a content creator, I reached a point admitting to myself, well, wait a minute, others are doing it, people my age or younger even, or older, it doesn't really matter, but they are all doing it. That must mean I can do it as well, if that is what I desire to do. And at the time, and even now, I still desire to do that. So I figured out my own way of creating content as I went on, as I started to develop the strength which I admire in others. So you can do the same in your own life with your own goals. If you see people achieve results in a certain area of your life that you also want to have results in, well, then realize that you're going to have to simply develop the strength which you admire in another. One of those parts is to admit for yourself that what they can do, you can do too, because you're both human beings, so you both have the same powers of mind. Unless, for example, you're severely disabled, then it might be more trickier, but as long as you're still functioning like the other person, you can essentially do similar things. Now James went on to say, it has been usual for men to think and to say, many men are slaves because one is an oppressor. Let us hate the oppressor. Now, however, there is among an increasing few a tendency to reverse this judgment, and to say, one man is an oppressor because many are slaves. Let us despise the slaves. The truth is that the oppressor and slave are cooperators in ignorance, and while seeming to afflict each other, are in reality afflicting themselves. A perfect knowledge perceives the action of law in the weakness of the oppressed and the misapplied power of the oppressor. A perfect love, seeing the suffering which both states entail, condemns neither. A perfect compassion embraces both oppressor and oppressed. He who has conquered weakness and has put away all selfish thoughts belongs neither to oppressor nor oppressed. He is free. A man can only rise, conquer and achieve by lifting up his thoughts. He can only remain weak and abject and miserable by refusing to lift up his thoughts. Before a man can achieve anything, even in worldly things, he must lift his thoughts above slavish animal indulgence. He may not, in order to succeed, give all of it up and selfishness by any means, but a portion of it must at least be sacrificed. A man whose first thought is bestial indulgence could neither think clearly nor plan methodically. He could not find and develop his latent resources, and would fail in any undertaking. Not having commenced manfully to control his thoughts, he is not in a position to control affairs and to adopt serious responsibilities. He is not fit to act independently and stand alone, but is limited only by the thoughts which he chooses. There can be no progress, no achievement without sacrifice, and a man's worldly success will be in the measure that he sacrifices his confused animal thoughts, and fixes his mind on the development of his plans, the strengthening of his resolution and self-reliance. And the higher he lifts his thoughts, the more manly, upright and righteous he becomes. The greater will be his success, the more blessed and enduring will be his achievements. The universe does not favor the greedy, the dishonored, the vicious, although on the mere surface it may sometimes appear to do so. It helps the honest and the virtuous. All the great teachers of the ages have declared this in varying forms. And to prove and know it, a man has to but persist in making himself more and more virtuous by lifting up his thoughts. Intellectual achievements are the result of thought consecrated to the search for knowledge, or for the beautiful and true life in nature. Such achievements may be sometimes connected with vanity and ambition, but they are not the outcome of those characteristics. They are the natural outgrowth of long and arduous effort and of pure and unselfish thoughts. Spiritual achievements are the consummation of holy aspirations. He who lives constantly in the conception of noble and lofty thoughts, who dwells upon all that is pure and unselfish, will, as surely as the sun reaches its zenith and the moon its full, become wise and noble in character, and rise into a position of influence and blessedness. Achievement of whatever kind is the crown of effort, the diadem of thought. By the aid of self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, and well-directed thought, a man ascends. By the aid of animality, indolence, impurity, corruption, and confusion of thought, a man descends. A man may rise to high success in the world and even to lofty attitudes in the spiritual realm, and again descend into weakness and wretchedness by allowing arrogant, selfish, and corrupt thoughts to take possession of him. Victories attained by right thought can only be maintained by watchfulness. Many give way when success is assured, and rapidly fall back into failure. All achievements, whether in the business, intellectual, or spiritual world, are the result of definitely directed thought, are governed by the same law, and are of the same method. The only difference lies in the object of attainment. He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much. He who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. Now, that is the end of the chapter, and the thing about sacrifice is that it was once taught to me that sacrifice means to make something sacred, to make room for the space that you really want. So you are in a way giving up on something of a lower nature in order to receive something of a higher nature. When we think of sacrifice, we sometimes think of giving up on stuff that we really love to do, and then it's a bad thing. It seems like it's not worth it. It seems like a sad thing, but that's not what real sacrifice means. It simply means making good for the space you desire, and in this case we want to make good inside our minds for the space that we want to express and realize. That's all you essentially have to contemplate for yourself and analyze in your own mind whether you're doing that. Now, the next chapter is titled Visions and Ideals. He started it out by saying, "The dreamers are the saviors of the world. As the visible world is sustained by the invisible, so men, through all their trials and sins and sordid vocations, are nourished by the beautiful visions of their solitary dreamers. Humanity cannot forget its dreamers. It cannot let their ideals fade and die. It lives in them. It knows them in the realities which it shall one day see and know. Composer, sculptor, painter, poet, prophet, sage, these are the makers of the afterworld, the architects of heaven. The world is beautiful because they have lived. Without them, laboring humanity would perish. He who cherishes a beautiful vision, a lofty ideal in his heart, will one day realize it. Columbus cherished a vision of another world, and he discovered it. Copernicus fostered the vision of a multiplicity of worlds and a wider universe, and he revealed it. Buddha beheld the vision of a spiritual world of stainless beauty and perfect peace, and he entered into it. Cherish your visions, cherish your ideals. Here is the music that stirs in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your purest thoughts, for out of them will grow all delightful conditions, all heavenly environment. Of these, if you but remain true to them, your world will at last be built. To desire is to obtain, to aspire is to achieve. Shall man's basest desires receive the fullest measure of gratification, and his purest aspirations starve for lack of sustenance? Such is not the law. Such a condition of things can never obtain. Ask and receive. Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. Your ideal is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. The greatest achievement was at first and for a time a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the soul a waking angel stirs. Dreams are the seedlings of realities. Now your circumstances may be uncongenial, but they shall not long remain so if you but perceive an ideal and strive to reach it. You cannot travel within and stand still without. Here is a youth hard pressed by poverty and labor, confined long hours in an unhealthy workshop, unschooled and lacking all the arts of refinement, but he dreams of better things. He thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. He conceives of it mentally, builds up an ideal condition of life. The vision of a wider liberty and a larger scope takes possession of him. Unrest urges him to action, and he utilizes all his spare time and means, small though they are, the development of his latent powers and resources. Very soon so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunities which fit the scope in his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. Years later we see this youth as a full-grown man. We find him a master of certain forces of the mind, which he wields with worldwide influence and almost unequaled power. In his hands he holds the cords of gigantic responsibilities. He speaks, and lo, lives are changed. Men and women hang upon his words and remold their characters, and sun-like he becomes the fixed and luminous center around which innumerable destinies revolve. He has realized the vision of his youth. He has become one with his ideal. Now this paragraph, this example that he gives of this young person pressed down by poverty and hard labor, when I first read it in 2008, that almost brought tears to my eyes, because in a way I felt like that is exactly where I want to go with my life. I want to understand the mind. I want to help people understand the power of their minds as well. So in a way it's like, at the time I just sort of pretend that he's writing about me almost. Like at the time I was a youth, a young guy, and then years later I'm this person indeed that is now talking about the power of the mind and helping people change their lives around. This is pretty interesting to me, how that went. It might be the same for you if that is your dream. Some people have a dream of helping others, do similar work as I do, but then they're still a little insecure on whether they can do it. Well, take this story and make it your own. Just assume that yes, this is the sort of vision I have for myself, and then grow towards it. That's what happened for me, and it keeps happening because this is a dream that has never let me go either. I've had other dreams along the way, but this one in particular, of consciousness and studying the mind and then sharing what I find, it seems to never let me go. So to me it also seems to indicate that this is what I'm meant to do anyway. Now James went on to write, and you too, youthful reader, will realize the vision, not the idle wish of your heart, be it base or beautiful, or a mixture of both, for you will always gravitate towards that which you secretly most love. Into your hands will be placed the exact results of your own thoughts. You will receive that which you earn, no more, no less. Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, your vision, your ideal. You will become as small as your controlling desire, as great as your dominant aspiration. In the beautiful words of Stanton Kirkham Davis, you may be keeping accounts, and presently you shall walk out of the door that for so long has seemed to you the barrier of your ideals, and you shall find yourself before an audience, the pen still behind your ear, the ink stain on your fingers, and then there shall pour out of the torrent of your inspiration. You may be driving sheep, and you shall wander to the city. You shall wander under the inner guidance of the Spirit into the studio of the Master, and after a time he shall say, I have nothing more to teach you, and now you have become the Master, who did so recently dream of great things while driving sheep. You shall lay down the saw and the plane to take upon yourself the regeneration of the world. To the thoughtless, the ignorant and the indolent, seeing only the apparent effects of things and not the things themselves, talk of luck, of fortune and chance. Seeing a man grow rich, they say, how lucky he is. Observing another become intellectual, they exclaim, how highly favored he is. and noting the saintly character and wide influence of another, the remark would be how chance aids him at every turn. They do not see the trials and failures and struggles which these men have voluntarily encountered in order to gain their experience, have no knowledge of the sacrifices they have made, of the undaunted efforts they have put forth, of the faith they have exercised, that they might overcome the apparently insurmountable and realize the vision of their heart. They do not know the darkness and the heartaches, they only see the light and joy and call it luck. Do not see the long and arduous journey, but only behold the pleasant goal and call it good fortune. Do not understand the process, but only perceive the results and call it chance. In all human affairs there are efforts and there are results, and the strength of the effort is the measure of the result. Chance is not. Gifts, power, material, intellectual and spiritual possessions are the fruits of effort. They are thoughts completed, objects accomplished, visions realized. The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by, this you will become. And that is the end of the chapter. Absolutely incredible and beautiful in a way. As I told you, one of those paragraphs, I took it so serious, it instantly went into my subconscious mind, you could say. But then again, there were also some tragic things in my life at the time that really pushed me onto this road. At the same time, I won't deny that, but I won't talk about it for this video because I can keep it positive for now. But that might be the same for you, that certain things in your life can really push you onto a greater road if you allow yourself to go there. If you keep your mind open, if you're willing to do new things that you have never done before. Because usually that is what visions inspire us to do. To go for greater and greater things far beyond what we've ever achieved in the past. And that is how life becomes a journey of fuller expansion and fuller expression, like always. Now let's go to the final chapter, and it's titled Serenity. It started out the following. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It is the result of long and patient effort in self-control. Its expression is an indication of ripened experience and of a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws and operations of thought. Man becomes calm in the measure that he understands himself as a thought-evolved being. For such knowledge necessitates the understanding of others as the result of thought, and as he develops a right understanding and sees more and more clearly the internal relations of things by the action of cause and effect, he ceases to fuss and fume and worry and grieve, and remains poised, steadfast and serene. The calm man, having learned how to govern himself, knows how to adapt himself to others, and they in turn reverence his spiritual strength, and feel that they can learn of him and rely upon him. The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, his power for good. Even the ordinary trader will find his business prosperity increase as he develops a greater self-control and equanimity, for people will always prefer to deal with a man whose demeanor is in this manner. The strong, calm man is always loved and revered. He is like a shade-giving tree in a thirsty land, or a sheltering rock in a storm. Who does not love a tranquil heart, a sweet-tempered, balanced life? It does not matter whether it rains or shines, or what changes come to those possessing these blessings, for they are always sweet, serene and calm. The exquisite poise of character, which we call serenity, is the last lesson of culture. It is the flowering of life, the fruitage of the soul. It is precious as wisdom, more to be desired than gold. Yeah, than even fine gold. How insignificant mere money-seeking looks in comparison with a serene life, a life that dwells in the ocean of truth, beneath the waves, beyond the reach of tempests, in the eternal calm. How many people we know who sour their lives, who ruin all that is sweet and beautiful by explosive tempers, who destroy their poise of character and make bad blood. It is a question whether the great majority of people do not ruin their lives and mar their happiness by lack of self-control. How few people we meet in life who are well balanced, who have that exquisite poise, which is characteristic of the finished character. Yes, humanity searches with uncontrolled passion, is tumultuous with ungoverned grief, is blown about by anxiety and doubt, Only the wise man, only he whose thoughts are controlled and purified, makes the winds and the storms of the soul obey him. Tempest-tossed souls, wherever you may be, under whatsoever conditions you may live, know this: in the ocean of life, the isles of blessedness are smiling, and the sunny shore of your ideal awaits your coming. Keep your hand firmly upon the helm of thought. In the bark of your soul reclines the commanding master. He does but sleep. Wake him. Self-control is strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Say unto your heart, peace, be still. Now that is the end of the final chapter. Now this chapter on Serenity is very fascinating because every time I read it, it's like a extreme reminder even to myself that I should keep working on this part specifically in my own life. It's so easy to get out of balance with the world and perhaps even with what people are doing. But here even James Allen is reminding us to stay calm, to keep the peace within our own consciousness and hearts and minds, because that way obviously life can keep being balanced for us individually at least. It's once we start reacting so much to the world, everything goes crazy in a way. And therefore the remedy to all of this is to remind ourselves of the power of serenity. So reading this chapter or even listening to this chapter over and over again can really make a difference in your life. It's a constant reminder of what you should actually be doing with your time to make sure that you can live a very fulfilled life in your own way. Now this is the end of the whole book, and I want to thank you for been listening to the other chapters. If you stumbled upon this video, you can find a playlist to the series of all these chapters in the description box below. And if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.